Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The webinar titled Future of Work as part of IFIM Knowledge series will be enlightened by Professor Ramesh Ranjan. Professor Ramesh Ranjan, a business consultant, executive coach, visiting professor, content manager, and editor, is currently associated with IFIM as an adjunct professor. In a career spanning nearly 3 decades, Mr. Ramesh has been the head of HR and held leadership positions in India and globally in organizations like Schneider Electric India, American Power Conversion, Chevron Texaco, Praxair, Core Systems India, Indian Hubs, and ITI. He strongly believes when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Now I request Professor Ramesh Ranjan to share his valuable insights with the participants. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Swarnika, and thanks to IFIM for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts and views about what the future of work would look like. And I am very happy to welcome all the participants for this particular program. And I hope that we'll get a peep into what the future looks like. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so what we will be discussing or sharing over the next 60 minutes would be trying to understand how the world of work is changing. What does the future of work mean for us? What are the future jobs and skills which all of us needs to work towards? And how do we prepare for the future of work? But before I start, I want to ask you all, why do you need to worry about the future? I would like to make this a dialogue rather than a monologue. So I'll be happy if there are some participation from the students. So why do you think we need to worry about the future? Okay, looks like we're not able to hear you. So because the world is constantly changing, I'm sure all of you all agree that today change is the only thing constant. And it's the ability of one to change will determine the success in your life. I'm sure you've heard this many times, but please understand this. We all heard of the parable of the boiled frog. They did this experiment in the lab where they started boiling the water and put a couple of frogs inside it. And as they kept increasing the temperature, nothing happened to the frog. 50 degrees, 60 degrees, 70 degrees, 80 degrees, the frog still stayed inside the water. And then they took it up to 100 degrees, 120 degrees, and then the frog died. The reason is the frog did not see the change coming. It did not see the temperature increasing. It overlooked the small constant changes and it started to neglect these changes. Ultimately, what happened to it? It died. Similarly to all of us, there are a lot of changes happening around us and we tend to neglect it and tend to ignore it to the extent that at one point of time it can become detrimental to our own survival. So therefore, it's very, very important that we keep our eyes and ears open and look at the changes around us and start preparing accordingly. Look at this, what happened in the last 15 years. Some of these companies, the Fortune 500 companies, they all went into existence, right? They say that 52% of the Fortune 500 companies went bankrupt. They were market leaders. Kodak, they were the market leaders when it came to photography, HMA for music, Nokia for mobile phones, 85% market share. Blockbuster was the leading movie rental company in the world. And Woolworth was into woolen and woolwear. So what happened to them? They got disrupted. So today, You either disrupt or you're going to get disrupted. That's the challenge that all of us face. We need to ensure that we stand up to these challenges and we either disrupt the market, disrupt the environment, or else we stand to get disrupted. We need to ensure that we adapt ourselves constantly to the changes in the environment around us, like the butterfly. It starts off as a moth, then becomes a caterpillar, and ultimately turns out into a beautiful butterfly. So, are we as human beings able to adapt to the environment and change ourselves and become a beautiful butterfly? Because, as Jack Welch said, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. So we need to ensure that the change within us is commensurate to the changes that's happening around us. If we do not be cognizant of this, the end is very, very near. I want to ask you all, has people changed? Is it that I'm not able to hear, or is it the students are not able to switch on their mics? I want to ask you all, have people changed? Can you all talk so that I understand the chat? I can't monitor both the chat as well as the screen. If people can speak, it'll be great. People have said yes. How have people changed? No. If you see here, what has changed? Technology has changed, right? From an analog, we've gone to a digital world. The world of work has changed. Societal norms have changed. And psychological insights on how we behave is also changed over a period of time. Yesterday's science fiction is today's reality. I do not know when you people were born. I guess just around the time you were born. When we were born, these were famous characters in comics, right? Where they had such gizmos and gadgets, which today is almost a reality. And if you've been following James Bond movie, right, over a period of time, his movie was very famous in those days because every movie he introduced some gizmos and gadgets, right? He talked about bulletproof cars. He talked about talking through his watch. He talked about, something like an Alexa operating things around him using the watch, right? He had a mobile phone in the 1970s and 80s, and so on and so forth. There was this famous serial called Star Trek, right? I don't know how many of you all have watched this movie in the 80s. Maybe you were not born yet. The Star Trek, we were all awed by this car. In 80s, they talked about a car having GPS navigation, voice-assisted commands, automatic window tints, right? A bulletproof vehicle, auto cruise controls, right? Infrared tracking and collision controls, autonomous vehicle, and a whole lot of other features. This was in the 80s, which was a fiction at that point of time. Nobody realized that in today's world, almost every car worth its salt has all these gizmos, right? Today we are talking about ADAS, right? Autonomous driving assistance systems, where we got cars in India itself. Forget about the Western world, where we got collision warning systems, automatic braking systems, adaptive cruise controls, lane support systems, right? And we also now talking about autonomous cars, driverless cars. So what was a fiction sometime back is today a reality. Similarly, what is a fiction today is going to become the reality of tomorrow. I'm going to tell you that a few years from now, there'll be no physical mobile phones. You may wonder, what am I saying? There will be virtual phones or maybe a bracelet on your hand, and you'll have projection systems on wherever you want, and that becomes your mobile phone. Virtual screens and displays. You can just about carry a small pen drive or a pen, and just about display wherever you want and have virtual displays. Autonomous cars are already there world over. The US, Japan, some parts of Europe and UK already have autonomous driverless cars on the road. They're saying there is estimated about 5,000 such cars on the road, including Tesla at this point of time. Wireless electricity. Today, electricity is conducted through wires. You're going to have shortly electricity conducted wirelessly. It's already there. They've already been able to successfully come out with such systems in the Western world. Still under testing, they're trying to find out what is the impact of this on the human health. And once they're able to ensure that wireless is harmless to the human beings, it's going to be made available to the general public. It's just like about the mobile phone, right? In the olden days, we used to have wired phones, wired audio systems. Today, everything is wireless, and shortly, wireless electricity will be the order of the day. Smart medicines. You're going to have capsules which are smart, which can navigate itself through the digestive system or to the blood, and then go and target the area of the disease, and then be able to deliver the medicines, what is called as the targeted delivery medicines. The way in which construction industry is going to be changed. There will be no more physical labor involved in constructing of homes. It will be done through 3D printing and can be constructed in a day or two. And believing, very recently, IIT Madras was able to construct a 3D home of about 750 square foot in one day. They actually took 3 days, one day to set up the machine, and then one day to prepare the ground. And then in one day, they were actually able to construct the home. Similarly, you see, the world's first registered marriage of a man marrying robot. Today, there are humanoids being created world over where you can buy a humanoid, you can buy a male or a female humanoid, you can buy a domestic maid, you can buy a whole lot of robotics, and to the extent that people haven't gone to the extent of marrying robots. Elon Musk has already said this. He wants to set up civilization on Mars by 2050, and there are already about 10,000 people who have signed up to go to Mars and have even given advance in this direction. Robo maids at home. Many of us, I'm sure, have some of these at home already, robotic vacuum cleaners, but now they're talking about robotic maids, robotic cooks. If I told you that the average age by 2050 or 2070 would be 100 years, you will not believe me. But that's where the world is going towards. Right now, the average longevity is about 76 years. But with the advancement of medicine and diagnostics, people are saying that you could live up to 100 years in about 25 years from now. Hyperloop trains, where you can fly, you can move from US to UK, from Delhi to Bangalore in a matter of half an hour. And then, of course, the way in which wars will be fought in future, there'll be no physical soldiers who will be put to the war front and risk being killed. Now they're going to have robotic soldiers. Why I'm saying all this is, as we start looking at the future, we must understand that what is sometimes seen as fiction today will become the reality of tomorrow. So therefore, it's very, very important that we understand what are some of those fictions which are there right now, which are in the imaginative stage, but likely to become a reality in a few years from now. So why should we be concerned about the future? Can I be able to hear you people, please? Why should we be concerned about the future? I'm not able to hear anyone. I don't know this. Is there a technical glitch, or is it nobody's speaking, or is it only through chatbot? I don't know. Anyway, we need to be concerned about the future because it makes your dreams more attainable, right? It gives you control of your life. If you know what is coming forward, then you can plan accordingly, and then you can shape up accordingly. It helps you to draw up a plan of action, right? It also helps us to establish and set some boundaries. If we know what is the limits, then we can work accordingly, and also helps us to stay ahead of competition. But more importantly, it helps us to win in the marketplace, whether as an organization, whether as an institution, whether as students, whether as professionals, in whatever sphere of life, whatever roles that we have. If we know what is coming, what the future looks like, and we start preparing accordingly, it helps us to win in the marketplace. These are some of the mega trends which are going to shape the future of work. This is what PwC has come up as part of their research work, where they said they've identified 5 global mega trends that's going to shape the future of work. We all know that there is a demographic shift, right? The world is moving more towards the east and moving away from the developed countries to the developing countries. While the rest of the world is having aging population, including China. If you see today's paper, they're talking about the aging population in China, whereas India is enjoying this part of the situation because our average age is about 28 years. So we got a young population and a large population, and that's why India is doing extremely well. But the rest of the world has got an aging population, right? There's shifts in global economic power. India is likely to become the third largest economic power by 2025 or 2026, next to US and China. So there are shifts in global economic powers. What was once an economic superpower are now no more the economic superpowers, and newer economies are taking over. There is rapid urbanization. I'm sure many of you all also are from the smaller cities, tier 2 cities. Every one of us are moving into the urban cities, to the metro cities. Everyone wants to move to Delhi, to Bombay, to Bangalore, to Calcutta, to Chennai, to Hyderabad. And there are not enough people in the rural areas. So therefore, there's a lot of urbanization which is happening, which is going to change the way in which we're going to look at in the future. Due to the climate change, like for example, I'm wearing a sweater right now at what 5:30, because Bangalore has suddenly become very cold, right? We're talking about 16 degrees, 15 degrees in Bangalore. We're talking about -3 degrees in Jaipur. We're talking about 0 degrees in Delhi. We're talking about continuous snowing in Himachal Pradesh. There's a lot of climate change which is happening, what is known as a global warming. That is leading to some resource scarcity also. The fossil fuels, they're saying, is likely to last probably another 30 years. After 30, 40 years, you're not going to have fossil fuels. How are we going to then manage transportation? How are we going to run cars and transport vehicles? So there is a lot of resource scarcity. Our minerals, our other resources, natural resources are also depleting. And that's going to change the way in which we work in the future. And of course, technological breakthroughs, which is advancing as so fast that they're saying that what was achieved in the last 100 years is much more than what was achieved since civilization. So maybe they know the Earth was about 10,000 years of civilization. What they have achieved, we have achieved much more the last 100 years. So there are huge technological breakthroughs which are going to impact the way in which the future is going to shape. Again, they're saying that there are some 7 key disruptors, right? This is what Deloitte has said, which is going to create unchanged, unprecedented change and opportunity. I always say this, right? A pessimist is one who sees an opportunity in every calamity. Sorry, a pessimist is one who sees a calamity in every opportunity, and an opportunist is one who sees an opportunity in every calamity. You can look at all these disruptions, all these changes around us, and look at it in a pessimistic way, or you can look at it in an optimistic way. So how do your students feel the future looks like? Are you pessimistic about the future, or are you optimistic? Are you feeling threatened with all these changes happening around, or are you feeling comfortable and happy about it? I hope I'm audible. Students can only ask questions on chat. They can't speak, is it? Okay. So these are the 7 disruptors, because there's technology everywhere. Every facet of our life is now going to be controlled by technology, whether we like it or not, right? There's a tsunami of data. Even as I'm speaking now, and even as you're hearing, we are generating a ton of data. That's what the whole concept of big data is about, right? There's diversity and generational change. We're talking about Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z. Artificial intelligence, cognitive computing, robotics are going to impact in a huge way and disrupt the way in which the future looks like. There is going to be consequences of automation, and therefore, how do we prepare for it? And there's going to be an explosion in contingent work. Work does not necessarily mean a 9 to 5 full-time job. It can also be a freelance, part-time jobs. We'll see a little more about that. And then, of course, change in the nature of a career, right? So these are some of the major disruptors which are going to disrupt the way in which the future is going to unfold before us. So what's next? You might be wondering, okay, what's next? So let's try and understand what's next, right? If you see here, there's a new world order, right? What we call as a changing world order, geopolitical developments, right? We talked about it, how America, which was once a superpower, is now being questioned by the other bigger countries like Russia, like India, like China. The power is moving from the West to the newer economies to Asia and other parts of the world. Legislations, public policy, market dynamics is changing the way in which the world is going to shape up in the future. We talked about these shifts in global economic power, demographic shifts, we talked about it, right? We're having on one side a large population of young people, and at the same time, on the other side, we have a large population of people who are getting old. So why should I be bothered about people aging? Do you think that having an aged population is an advantage to a country or a disadvantage? Okay. And thanks to now communication systems and the various social media tools available with us, the world is shrinking and becoming a global village. We are becoming one community, irrespective of whether you're in Africa or in Australia or in India. In fact, right now, this webinar could be watched by people from anywhere in the world, right? So it's becoming one global village, one community. There's change in the social dynamics, and everyone is now worried about sustainability. Would this planet be able to sustain itself, and would we be able to pass on to our future generations a clean environment to all of them? So sustainability is becoming the key. So this is a new world order which is shaping up, which is going to shape up in the future. The new business order, which is going to unfold before us and already started unfolding, right? New business models are going to come. Whoever thought that Paytm would be, or an Airtel would be a competitor to State Bank of India or to Axis Bank? The digital money would take over from the physical banks. Whoever thought that without having any hotel, without having any cars, the Ubers and the Airbnbs can challenge the traditional brick and mortar hotels and the transportation industry. Co-optation, right? We don't know who's your competition. I was once in a conference where I was sitting with the chairman of one of the large banks, and he was telling me that how he had advised some time back, they were trying to find out who their competition was. And he said, nobody ever thought in the boardroom that one day Amazon Pay, Airtel Money, Google Pay, Phone Pay would be the competitors. And today, almost 26% of financial transactions in India are happening outside of banks. So they never knew who their competition was. So now they have to start working with people whom they never knew their competitors were, right? Organizations also now starting to realize what's the purpose? Why am I here? Why am I doing what am I doing? Right? We're looking at the jobless growth. While they say that India's economy is growing at the rate of about 5% or 6%, a lot of people are complaining that not enough jobs are being created. So there's a jobless growth. And that's what we're looking at. More and more economy will grow, but does it commensurate with creating more and more jobs? There is a Uberization happening, right? Aggregators are now going to control the economy. The Amazon, what is it? It's an aggregator of all the products and services. Or what is Airbnb? What is Google? They are just collecting data, collecting various partners, bring them to a platform, and then connecting the producer and the consumer. And then they are regulating the way in which transactions happen. And of course, we're looking at mass personalization. As much as we wanted standardization, everybody wants to be treated uniquely in a different way. And therefore, organizations are working towards mass personalization. We all have heard enough of this technologies, right? The future of technologies. Some are going to be adopted and adapted, and some of the technologies are going to be abandoned. Right? When we started our early part of our career, we had physical keyboards on mobile phones. We had different ways of communication. Pages, right? We had pages where we had to send a text message. Then we used to use pages to send text messages. Those technologies are abandoned. And today we have got smartphones. We do not know whether it's a camera, whether it's a personal computer, whether it's a phone, whether it's a fax, right? It's all in one, whether it's a bank, it's an ATM. We're talking today of Industry 4.0, what they're calling it as a second machine age. In the 1920s, in the early part of last century, they talked about the industrial age, when mechanization happened in the textile industry, in the automobile industry, in the lot of steel industry. Today, we're talking about Industry 4.0, second machine age. We're now moving to a virtual world. The very fact that this workshop is happening virtually is possible because of technology. So we're now moving into a virtual world, a meta world, right? Facebook has now renamed itself as Meta, and they're working on a platform where we would all be interacting with each other on a virtual basis. Of course, everyone is now talking about experience, right? The consumer experience, employer experience, and that is what everyone is looking towards. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to invade every aspect of our life. And of course, autonomous automation and robotics are some of the future technologies which is going to change the way in which we're going to look at the future. If you see in terms of what's coming in terms of the workplace of the future, it's going to be virtual and hybrid. When we all started, and I'm sure many of you all would have also started, it was going physical, whether to an institution, to a college, or to an office. But today, it's becoming virtual and it's hybrid. It's going to be physical as well as virtual, what they call it as phygital, right? You can work from anywhere. No more. It is required that you need to be present 9 to 5 in a physical office. You could work just about from anywhere and still deliver. Agile workspaces, smart cities, smart workplaces, right? Co-working. Companies are now giving away their office spaces and moving into what is known as co-working, where you hire office space on a daily rental basis, depending on where people want to work, rather than locking all my fixed assets in a big building. The world is becoming more connected. Human-machine interface and partnership, right? Tomorrow, when you join an organization, you might have a robotic or a humanoid or some sort of automation which you'll have to work with. So you need to know, how do I live with, and how do I partner, and how do I work with this human machine? And then, of course, more and more surveillance will happen. Organizations will start monitoring you because they don't physically see you. Since you work remotely from just about anywhere, Organization will start monitoring you, doing surveillance. Much to our dismay, we may not like it that people, you may call it as spying, you may call it as monitoring, you may call it as surveillance, but organizations would be. They will watch every step of yours on the laptop. Where are you visiting? What type of information are you collecting? What type of information you're passing? What mails you're sending? Which are the websites you're visiting? How are you spending your time? Everything will be tracked, and there are tools available today. So that's going to be part of the future of the workplace. And then, of course, in terms of future of organizations itself, the organizations will have to reimagine themselves. They'll have to redesign planning in terms of, do I design the future? They'll have to innovate. If not, they will perish, right? So it's going to be a culture of disruption. Organizational life cycles will change. In the past, organization would survive 25 years, 30 years, 50 years, but now they're saying an organizational life cycle could be as low as 5 to 10 years. After 5 years, you're not sure whether the company will survive or not, right? So organizational life cycles are getting shortened. And then we're going to move to a era of crowdsourcing. I don't have to do everything myself. I can go onto the platform, onto a social media or to the internet and then seek for help. And people from around the world will be able to help you, whether in terms of raising finance, whether it's doing a project, whether it's some innovations, or it's a social cause, or an uprising, or a social movement. Crowdsourcing has come to stay and it's going to be the future. And of course, thanks to social media, there's going to be democratization of the workplace where people will have a voice to raise, people have a voice to give their opinion and bring it to the attention of the larger public. And of course, we're going to have multi-generational workforce. We're going to have workforces or the organizations where you'll have the Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, the millennials all working together. And it's not going to be easy, right? How do we ensure that all of them work harmoniously towards the organization objectives? In terms of organizations also have to start thinking, or every one of us have to start thinking, what will be the future jobs and skills, right? There'll be a new class of labor, which was hitherto not there, right? What are the future skills? We'll discuss a little later. No one ever knows what are the skills required 5 years from now, 10 years from now. How will the future jobs look like? Will there be job creation or job destruction, right? How do you bridge the gap between the industry and academia to develop these future skills? These are some of the challenges. And then, of course, as I said, the world is moving more towards a digital labor. It's no more going to be physical labor, it's going to be digital labor. And then new norms of work going to come up. So therefore, you need not have to be employed in an organization. You need not have to be physically contracted to work 9 to 5, 6 days a week in an organization. You can be a freelancer, what they call as an open talent economy. In the United States of America, today, almost 36% of the work is done by freelancers. Only 66% of people work in traditional organizations, but more and more people are becoming what is known as free range employees or contract employees who have the flexibility to work across organizations and not be just bogged down with one organization. So in the past, if you see, people were being paid for the time that they spent at the workplace. What do you think will be in the future? How are people going to be paid? What do you think would be the future? Okay, I'm not getting it on the chat. So if you see in future, people are not going to be paid for the amount of hours that they spend in the workplace or the years of experience, but people are going to be paid for the idea that they bring to the organization, for the value that they bring to the organization. So there's going to be a dramatic shift in terms of how people are going to be rewarded, how organizations are going to look at you, not for the number of hours or the years of experience that you bring to the table, but you're going to be looked at in terms of what are the ideas that you're creating, generating, and what are the values that you're bringing to the table. Interesting, right? 65% of the Generation Z will do jobs that do not exist yet. Is it scary? 65% of y'all will be doing jobs that do not even exist today. Is it worrisome? Is it scary? Right? Look at this, right? A beautiful cartoon where they do not know what blockchain is, right? So what they're saying is 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't been invented yet. This is really scary, whether you're a student passing out of the college, whether you're an employed person in the organization, whether you're a leader, because we do not know that 10 years from now or 7 years from now, what types of jobs are going to exist because they don't exist right now. So that's this phase of rapid change that's happening around us. Look at how the jobs have changed or evolved over a period of time, right? Jobs that existed 12 years ago but are gone or disappearing, right? We had electrical meter reader, right? We had switchboard operator, TV, VCR repairman, electronic assemblers, assembly line workers, right? Video store managers and clerks, then receptionists, and in the movie theaters, they had operators operating those projectors. They've all disappeared. Some of these jobs which were not there 12 years back are there today. Blockchain engineer, mobile app developer, sustainability manager, cloud computing, right? AI and big data analyst. This was never heard of 10 years back. Autonomous vehicle designer, right? YouTube content creator. Today, you can make tons of money on YouTube by just creating good content. There are people who are earning millions of dollars per year by just making content on the YouTube. Maybe a travel blog, it could be an automobile blog, it could be a financial blog, just about any content that you create. And if you're being creative and you've got the right audience, you can be a very good, successful vlogger. There was nothing called YouTube content creator 10 years back or 12 years back. Similarly, we are saying that 12 years from now, you may have these jobs which do not exist today. We're talking about quantum programmers, climate change scientists, right? Rocket design architects, spacecraft pilots. We all know about your aircraft pilots, but now we're going to have people working for spacecrafts as spacecraft pilots, transporting from the Earth to the Moon or to the Mars, right? Autonomous vehicle designers, blockchain and crypto specialists. The world is moving towards blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Cultured meat farmers. Now they're talking about, you don't have to cull an animal to develop meat. They're saying that we can develop the meat in the lab artificially, but real meat, right? So they're going to have cultured meat farmers, hazardous waste engineers. So some of these jobs do not exist today would be around 12 years from now. So as we saw in the previous slide, 85% of jobs that are going to come up 30 years from now, 10 years from now, we're not even aware of what it is today. So if you see some interesting things about what are the jobs, again, right? Have you heard of such titles? Head of hoopla, right? These are some of the jobs which are coming up in some organizations, but going to be very much in the future. Vice president of no, right? It says that the person has the power to say no, and every project has to go through him, right? Because that person will then review whether it is in line with the organization's objectives, line with the organization's values, is it ethical business? So he's going to have the power to say no. There's going to be a position called the cultural translator, new diversity officer, flash designer, data science maker, right? We're generating so much of data. Now, how do I analyze the data ethically? How do I use that data ethically? And how do I interpret that data? Data science makers, sensorial integration designers, right? There are going to be a lot of sensors which are going to collect data from different physical, virtual, meta. And then how do we design it and how do we ensure that within the data privacy laws, within the ethical practices, how do we sense all these various things? And then, of course, you're going to have BYOD, virtual assistants. We're talking about the chat GPT now, the chatbots, which are in the news right now. Similarly, you're going to have virtual assistants assisting you in almost every walk of life and every sphere of life. Look at another set of job, right? AI educational programmer. One of my friend's daughter has gone to the US to study robotic psychology, right? Something like AI educational programmer. So what they're saying is you're going to hire robotic psychologists who are going to train the robots to behave like human beings, right? Through training, the robots can be, refined to become like human beings and behave more like human beings. They'll be taught how to empathize with human beings, how to understand human emotions, and how do I have to react to human emotions. So we're talking about AI educational programmers, intelligent reduction specialist, right? Ideas broker, creativity coach, alliance strategist, professional rebel, right? What they call as can I be your devil's advocate within the organization, right? Purpose agent, active listener. So these are real life job descriptions and job positions which some of the companies are already starting to toy with. And this is going to become more and more visible in many other organizations. So many of your students can aspire for some of these jobs. But do we know what is the skills required? Do we have the experience and the expertise? Is there someone to train you for this at this point of time? No, right? So therefore, we need to start looking at what would be the future jobs and start working and preparing for it accordingly. Look at some of the top skills that what the World Economic Forum is talking about, right? Analytic thinking, innovation, active learning and learning strategies, complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, social influence, right? Use of technology, and more importantly, monitoring and control, right? Then we're talking about stress and stress management, stress tolerance, right? And then reasoning and then idea creation. These are some of the top skills which are going to be emerge in 2025. So many of you all will have to start thinking, do you have these skills? Have you started working in this direction? And are you preparing for these skills, which are just about 2 or 3 years from now? And again, in terms of professional skills, you need to look at continuous learning, about collaboration, about program management, about problem solving, product management, communication, and storytelling, right? The problem with many one of us is we have a lot of ideas in our head, right? But how do I communicate it, right? How do I create a story around it and being able to articulate my ideas in such a way that it creates an impact on the other person and influences the other person to respond to it, right? So therefore, storytelling is a very, very important skill that many of us have to develop. Design thinking, right? Negotiation and influencing. And then more importantly, we're talking about digital leadership. How do I leverage technology? How do I leverage digital in terms of, bringing in superior products, services, and experiences to our customers? And then, of course, as students, this will always be there, right? Curiosity and imagination. Just because you pass out of college or just because I've retired from corporate world doesn't mean that I give away this. Curiosity and imagination must be part of your life from birth to death, right? Initiative and entrepreneurship, agility and adaptability, right? Critical thinking and problem solving, effective oral and written communication, right? Collaboration. They're saying that Indians are poor team players, poor collaborators. So does 1+1+1 become 3, or 1+1+1 become 10, or 1+1+1 become 1? So therefore, collaboration and teamwork is very, very important. You'll have to ensure that you develop these skills. Assessing and analyzing information. That's where analytics comes into place, where you'll be able to assess the tons of data that is coming across. Can I see some trends? Can I look at some insights? Can I assess what's the insights and then take actions accordingly? So these skills will always be there in addition to whatever I shared earlier. And you need to ensure that you work towards these skills. Now, many of your teachers, many of your parents, many of the people who have told you, right? Do what you love. Right? They said, follow your passion, right? Live your dream. But I want to ask you all, is it possible? Is it possible to do what you love? Is it possible to follow your passion? Is it possible to live your dream? Or what do you think is a percentage of people, based on the past trends, percentage of people who are able to live their dream or follow their passion or do what they love? What do you think is a percentage? 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%? What do you think is a? Okay. So in the future, believe me, future is going to be about love what you do. I saw somebody chat, right? Okay. So as much as you want to do what you love, let's be realistic. It may not be possible. In the absence of that, what you should learn is how do you love what you do? Whatever job that comes on hand, whatever hobbies, whatever comes at your hand, you must be able to love it. Because please understand, doing what you love is freedom, but loving what you do is happiness, right? As much as all of us want freedom, we also want happiness. In the absence of happiness, what happens? It leads to stress, right? It leads to tensions. So therefore, you got to learn to live with what you have and then start loving it. In the absence of that, it leads to stress. And that's why there's a lot of stress management today, right? Of course, we all love freedom, but then freedom is not so easy. It'll be great if you're able to do what you love, but then the percentage of people who are able to achieve that is hardly about 5%. Only 5% of the world's population are able to do what they love. The remaining 90%, 95% of people will have to start working in terms of loving what they do. So I just want to say that don't worry too much about the future. Don't worry too much about the progress you're making. But it's very important that you must be aware at least of what is coming, right? That's the first step. At least you must know what's coming, but don't get too worried about it. Because you don't know when the transition period will start, when the changes will happen, right? The idea is to understand that what is the future like and become prepared for it. Look at this, right? Kodak was a market leader, was a number one. What is today Apple in terms of market capitalization? Kodak was a number one in terms of market capitalization in the world. Forget about just being a market leader in photography. In terms of financial performance as an organization, Kodak was a number one in terms of market capitalization in the 80s, till the 80s. But then what happened after that? Kodak did not see the digital disruption coming. And then the Samsungs and the Apples came over and took over the entire imaging industry, made it digital, and then Kodak went into bankruptcy. So therefore, you must be aware of what's coming and start preparing for it, because you don't know what's going to happen, who's going to come, and then dislodge you from your comfort zone. The best thing is, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So can you shape the future? As I said, disrupt or be disrupted. The best way to predict is, will you be able to create the future? Of course, many of us may say that as an individual, how can I do that? But why not? Steve Jobs was able to create the future. Sundar Pichai or Larry Page of Google were able to create the future. They are now leading the future rather than following the future, right? So my question to you all is, are you ready for the future? Right? I want to ask you, are you people ready for the future? Okay. I want to just end this talk with a video from the World Economic Forum, which talks about the future of work. Now, I hope this video works. Are you all able to hear me? One minute. I think I may say share sound.
It's easy to imagine a future filled with flying cars, holograms, and never-ending viral videos. But as the future of work becomes more and more digital, it becomes harder to grasp what that will actually look like and how we will fit into it.
We have the opportunity to say, like, what is it that really takes the most advantage of people's ingenuity and creativity?
There's always these moments where technology has forced us into a different direction. And in most cases, it's been positive.
You can think of robots and AI as helping you to remove the most redundant parts of your day in your life so you can focus on the higher level thinking. I'm excited about that future.
For the vast majority of us, the workplace is rapidly changing, and it can feel like we're speeding towards the unknown. By 2025, 85 million jobs may be displaced by technological advancements, which is a scary number. But at the same time, 97 million new roles may emerge that will be adapted to a new division of labor between humans, machines, and algorithms. There are a whole host of emerging industries that will create a range of new jobs, just one of which is drone piloting. Andy and Nathambi from Wingcopter are using drones to help improve people's lives.
We are currently optimizing supply chains in Malawi, specifically delivering medicine.
Transit is not possible through roads. So drones come in and help poorer and less advantaged people have access to medicine.
And what's really interesting right now with the drone industry is we're seeing drone academies in Benin and Sierra Leone that are essentially addressing the skill gap in Africa when it comes to this high-tech technology.
So I see drone technology being such an emerging market that allows for opportunities, not just in piloting, but in maintenance, in auxiliary staff, and in other sectors.
For many people, automation is a scary word, because they think of machines that are essentially taking away their job. What we all have to realize is that through technology, we are actually going to have better standards, better skilled jobs, more opportunity, and traditional jobs will transition into new and more exciting jobs for the future.
Andy and Nathambi's work is representative of many of these new roles, taking machines and making them work for us. In the same way that workers had to learn how to use the machines and tools in the first industrial revolution, it's going to be up to us to learn how to use the tools of the future in this fourth industrial revolution. That means more people learning how things like software and robots function. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, just isn't going to fly anymore. People working today will see the share of their core skills change by up to 40% in the next 5 years. Reskilling will become key to this transition. The good news is that it's never been easier to learn new skills. Many companies are prioritizing training to build a secure future for themselves and their employees, with 2 out of 3 expected to see a return on investment in reskilling their workforce. What's more, the internet has made self-education both accessible and affordable. Christo set up creative education company The Future to help people make a living doing what they love.
Everything that you want to learn is available on the internet, and we can explore in ways that are very low risk to us. Because imagine the old approach, which is I have to submit an application to university or college. And so that means there's a whole bunch of prep work I have to do. And even for some people, the admission fees and essays, the barrier to entry is just too high. In this way, I think, especially with all the resources, workshops, courses, ebooks, training, one-on-one mentorship, peer groups, all that kind of stuff, that's available at very low cost. So you can dip your toes into something, find out if this is a good fit for you, and then decide this is where I want to do a deep dive. And you can learn at your own pace, which I love.
Doesn't seem quite as scary now, does it? Still, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the future is going to be all ones and zeros. Although digital literacy is going to be incredibly important, it is in fact the soft skills that are going to be at the core of the average future worker.
Right.
In a world where hybrid remote working will be more common, self-awareness and self-management will be king. roles centered around employee well-being and community will become more important, and emotional intelligence will be necessary for managers to provide proper support and foster happier, more fulfilled teams. We may even start to see official certification of these softer skills, allowing for greater freedom to transfer between industries. One of these growing industries will be the care economy. With our ever-growing and aging population, care for the elderly, the vulnerable, and children will become a high priority. In a society that's increasingly putting well-being above other concerns, this sort of job will become more common as investment moves to social infrastructure. Andrea is discovering how investing in robots is making hospital care more human-centered.
Even before the pandemic, we were already seeing the care sector being stretched and there being a renewed focus on how do we really kind of stem the burnout that people are feeling. If you talk to most nurses and clinicians, like the part of their job that they love the most is when they have that kind of deep connection with their patients. And so I think it's great if we can think of ways that automation, like Moxie, taking away some of the mundane delivery tasks, can kind of open up more time for the parts of a person's job that they really love. There may end up being more and more interactions that patients have with automation and technology. But in the end, that caregiving experience that you have that's really person to person, I don't see how that's ever going to go away.
As you can see, far from the uncaring image of technology in science fiction, it can actually increase our capacity to take care of each other. It can also help us to care for our planet. In the coming years, climate action is going to need to kick into overdrive, and this means two things: innovation and new jobs. Just one example of these jobs is coral farming. With more coral reefs dying off each year, coral restoration is more important than ever. But the current process is labor-intensive and requires an advanced skill set. However, people like Stephen are using technology to open up these coral farming roles to a wider group.
Charm is a device that allows coral restoration practitioners the ability to grow thousands to hopefully millions of coral by the touch of a button. This robot will have on board the artificial intelligence and the ability to clean coral, feed coral when they're hungry, identify pests, and do the general maintenance tasks that a lot of people need to do but don't quite have the time or resources.
There is a growing need for people to be working in this space for green technology, for sustainable practices. What we actually need is a group of people to say, this is the kind of future that we want, where we integrate technology with the environment and we flourish. And we want to have a job in an industry that promotes thriving.
The future of work is coming. For some, it's already here. It can be a bright future. A future that can improve our well-being and the well-being of the planet. So while automation can sound scary, with careful regulation and policies that promote equal opportunities and inclusion, there are ways it can make our working lives happier, more effective, more human.
So, as we saw that, right, the future is coming. It's here and
It's easy
now,
to imagine.
but it's good that we start preparing for that. And it's nothing that we need to be scared of, but look at it as an opportunity for us to grow. So any questions so far? And we come to the end of the session. I would like to ask you if there are any questions people have got. I'll be happy to answer. Any questions students have got? Anyone? Okay. If there are no questions, then I would just like to say thank you for spending your time with me. I hope this has been able to give you an idea about what the future of the work is going to look like. And you can connect with me anytime, and I'll be more than happy to share a lot more knowledge and information that I may have or come across. Thank you very much once again for having given me this opportunity. And I look forward to be interacting with all of you all in the days to come. Thank you. We close this. Thank you. And I'm happy that some of you all found it very informative. Thank you very much. And have a good day and a good weekend. Bye-bye.